Ashley. How you doing, Rumer?
Good. You've got a great green wall behind you.
Thank you. It's there's a coffee shop called Blank Street Coffee, and there's the color of their coffee cup. So I literally took one of their cups and went to a paint shop and said, "Can I just get this?" And I
Ooh.
made it. So here we go. But thank you. I really enjoyed the film. I mean, we take it a little bit sort of for granted now, but it's kind of worth remembering that before the kind of female-led comedies of this nature, where women were allowed to be kind of crass and sort of be themselves and talk about things you didn't you would only usually see in kind of male-led comedies, was kind of seldom seen before films like Bridesmaids. But is it still so important and cool to have films like this? Was that an incentive for you in getting involved?
Absolutely. And I'm actually so delighted that you picked up on that because it's what I've been saying today and another interview is that I think so much of the time films are so focused on being sexy or like you're funny and sexy or this. And I just think there's when women get together, we are crass. We do talk about, silly things. And I think it's important to have films that also show and celebrate that because there's this, I think, image of like, we never have hairy legs and we're this and we're always put together. And, women don't fart or poop. And we're all like these perfectly put together beings who never have meltdowns. Or if we do, then we're crazy or out of control. And I don't know. I think I loved that there was a script that, I don't know, it just had a little bit of that silliness and wasn't afraid to push the boundaries a bit.
I always think too, when you get these kind of road trip style group of friends away together movies, that they must just be so fun to shoot as you're kind of replicating that in real life as a kind of group of actors kind of off together on a shoot. What was the kind of the atmosphere like on this set, and how much was it as fun as it looked from an audience perspective?
Probably even more fun because, you know, I I was just cracking up the whole time. And I said this early when we were on, like we were just trying to make each other laugh, and there are scenes that you can read on a page, but like the scene where Michelle, who plays Wendy, when we're eating lunch and she goes off to have sex with that guy, like I had no idea that that actor was going to come up and, he had his mustache and we were laughing so hard. Or, Dionne, when she's doing that scene and she's calling in, like we were howling with laughter. And and Kimia, even the way that she would say things just so deadpan. And again, in the moment, it's what these other actors are bringing to it. You could have an entirely different group of people who might not necessarily bring that kind of life. But I have said a few times to the girls and other people, like I feel like being on this set really awakened my passion for comedy because they are just so talented.
And are divorce parties a real thing? Do you know?
No, I don't know, but maybe they should be because
Yeah.
these days, especially in California, getting a divorce seems like it takes years and effort and so much, time. And I feel like you should celebrate it. you know?
And if you, I love the kind of this idea, this if you're coming into kind of a bit of a windfall and to sort of take off, just going away with kind of all your friends. If you came into a real kind of windfall, if you kind of won a big on the lottery, what do you think is the first thing you do?
I would be on a boat in the middle of Greece, like, you know, put me by an ocean so fast. I feel like there's so many people who would be like, well, I would save it and I would do this. And I just feel like, you know, I would maybe get to work on a house of my dreams somewhere so that while I'm in Greece, the house of my dreams is coming together. But I think yeah, I think going with some of your friends or your family and taking just exploring. I have a 1-year-old daughter, and so I feel like to be able to just go somewhere with my tiny little family and just sit on a boat and explore places we'd never been and show her. And she's just started, like, she loves food. So being able to, give her different kinds of food, and that would be heaven.
I've never been to Greece, but I'm going in September and I'm so excited.
My favorite place in the world.
Nice. Where would you recommend?
There's an island called Eos.
Okay.
Um, do you know if you're going to the Aegean or the Ionian side?
We're planning on going to Sifnos down in, I don't know where.
Sifnos Sifnos is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible because if you can just take a little boat while you're there and just get to go and explore these other islands, like, you go and walk up you swim in the ocean in the morning, and then you walk up these little stairs at night, and you walk through these teeny tiny little towns with these little cobblestone, and then you have dinner at a place, and there's a man who was like, yes, this meat is from my farm. I went and got it, today, and it's so fresh, and it's just incredible. I feel like I went a couple summers ago, and it was life-changing.
Oh, I cannot wait. I'm so excited, especially for some good old halloumi cheese. But
Oh,
but I was going to go back to the film. I wanted to ask about working with Heidi on this because obviously it's a feature debut for her. I know she's done some shorts and stuff. I just wonder if you could talk a bit about your collaboration with her on this project and kind of what it is that, because obviously when you sort of want to take on roles and take on projects, you have a filmmaker's kind of back catalogue of films. I just wondered what it was that gave you a sense for her kind of identity as a storyteller and her kind of tonality, I suppose.
Heidi was so silly and also so, I don't know what it was. Like when I was auditioning, I felt like she got me. I felt like, very often when you're reading and you're doing these auditions, especially nowadays, it's very rare that you get any feedback. And then what I loved was that, I read it in one direction, and she, asked me to do this, but I felt like she understood where I was coming from, and she could see the value of what I had to bring to the character, and wasn't afraid. I guess the word I would use is that I felt like she really wanted me to succeed, and she believed in me. And I think sometimes as an actor that can feel very few and far between. And I felt like she really wanted to collaborate and was open to ideas. And so, she was very generous with me because when I was on set, I asked to kind of shadow her because I'm very interested in directing. So there would be nights when I wasn't necessarily working that I would stay and ask her questions and say, okay, well, why are you doing this way? And what's this? And I felt like we developed a fantastic friendship because she was so open with me about the story that she was trying to tell. And then also created such a container for all of us actors to be able to play. There's so much in the movie that's things that we made up on the day, or, silly little one-liners, or like weird body movements that we do, or just funny things. And she was so open to it and really helped cultivate and nurture that in each of us in the different ways that we brought that out. And so I really enjoyed being able to work with someone who's not, especially a writer and director, because when you're working in that context, it can be a bit challenging at times where the writer is like, this is what it's going to be, and I'm hilarious, and I've written this, and it's so funny, don't change it. And so she was really like, look, let's try it one way how it's written, and then whatever you want, like let's play or let's do something silly, and just really shared a lot of that with me. And so I'm very grateful.
Yeah. But you mentioned that you kind of like were sort of shadowing her a bit and they're kind of like potentially wanting to kind of do some directing and stuff. Do you think that comes a little bit from being like at home on a movie set? Do you feel quite at home on a movie set? Because I just wondered if you spent much time there as a kind of kid, if there were any memorable trips to sets when your sort of parents were working at all.
I mean, I definitely feel very at home on a film set because for exactly the reason that you shared, because that's where I grew up. And so for me, you know, I, I feel like when I see a film or I see a story, without realizing it until very recently, like I feel like I've always had a kind of director's eye. Even when I would, put on silly things with my sisters, I would say, all right, you here, and we're going to start here. And I feel like that's always been a bit of my personality. And so in the past, couple years, I've gone, wow, I would, being behind the camera be something that I'd be interested in, because I feel like visually I love storytelling. And, I try to watch everything, and I'm always very interested in how people tell stories. And yeah, I just think like this is kind of, I mean, in my blood, but it's just I feel so passionate about it in all of the different forms, being in front of the camera, but I'm also like I'm so passionate about wardrobe. I some might call it a control freak, but like I love, if I were to do something in a project, I love to be involved in all of it, the makeup, the wardrobe, the set design, all of it. Like I love to create the whole picture.
Yeah, when you were a kid, was there ever a time when you went on set that and you just went, wow? Was there a kind of moment, a light bulb moment in some regards, where you kind of saw, because I know I've been on some sets before, and sometimes you create kind of sort of kingdoms, So I just wondered if there was ever a moment as a kid that really captured your imagination.
I think without a doubt, when my dad was doing Fifth Element, um, that set was, incredible. I remember coming to set early with him one day, and we just walked past the room that had just even all the wigs in it,
Yeah.
and it's true. Like you can really, when you're working at a certain level, right? Especially those kind of films, like you can create a whole world, and like the wardrobe and the costume and the locations, you're completely transported somewhere else, especially if it's, say, a period film or, sci-fi or something like that. That's something that I don't think I've gotten to do very much in my career, that I would absolutely love to, being able to, do a period film or something like that, where it's completely outside of yourself. That would be heaven to me.
Well, that's pretty much all I got time for. But I just wanted to end on a very quick note, because you mentioned obviously sort of working with with your dad's going on set. But as a website, HeyUGuys, that adores movies and in turn naturally adores your father's input into cinema. I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm not going to pry. But I just wanted to say we're all thinking of him. We're all wishing both him and all of you well. That man is a bona fide legend, and we're all behind him. So yeah. Thank you so much, Rumer. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you today.
And thank you for your wonderful questions. I really appreciate them.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey, you guys!
Hey,